I am here with Professor Richard Smith from the University of Southern California, Thornton School of Music, an amazing guitar player with so much history in the Los Angeles jazz scene, and an incredible teacher. And a guy that I took guitar lessons from back in 1987 at
Gee,
G.I.T. So, and this is the first time that I've seen him since those days, and a lot of years have passed. How many years is that?
that's like 40 something.
Oh man, don't tell anybody.
No, it's our secret.
Yes. So, man, I was just checking out some clips of you playing with the I think it was the Institute thing, and it was a chill. It's had a chill harmonic link, but you were playing with a group, and dude, you were just absolutely killing it.
Thank you.
And your style has that West Coast thing, but you can absolutely burn like Lukather. It's an incredible thing. But you're such a great educator, and your story is incredible. You saw Chick Corea at 14, and you got on your bike, rode home, broke up with the girlfriend, and decided to practice and begin.
Well, that actually has an upside to it. I months later we got back together. So and I tried to stay up all night practicing, but made it to about 3 o'clock in the morning. And anyway, but the point is, yeah, being a 14-year-old riding your bike, sneaking into the Urban Memorial Union at the University of Oregon that would get the only people from out of town in, being 14 and seeing Al Meola at the age of 19 unbelievably shredding on everything that really set in motion this kind of I saw it. And if I mathematically I was going, if I practice 8 hours a day between now and the time I'm 19 years old, I'll be able to be with Chick Corea, and which just seemed like made all the sense in the world. I just had to find all that time to practice, but it's something I share with my students. I think it's an essential. Is that was my thunderbolt moment, right? It's like that was it. I saw what I needed to do, and within 2 years, I was playing professionally. Year and a half. I had a little jazz band, and Eugene was this amazing place for jazz. Jazz at that time I had five cooking jazz clubs,
Wow.
and even back then, I was kind of writing my own stuff. But there was such a vibrant jazz scene in Eugene, and I'm so grateful for that kickoff that I got from that concert. Um, years and years later, I can brag that my students, at least, were playing with Chick Corea before he passed away.
Wow.
So it was kind of circuitous win.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing, man. And it's like we met back, imagine the scene. It's 1987.
Yeah.
It's GIT. And I would say those were probably the golden years of GIT, because look at the players that were there. You had Gambale and Henderson and Diorio, and on
Jeffrey
and on and
Madden.
on. And then you.
Scott Henderson. Well, the funny thing about that is Joe DiOrio was my teacher and my mentor at USC. And when I graduated, he said, Richard, why don't you come up here and I think we might have a position for you. So just come up in here and talk to us and we'll see if we can hire you. And I walked into the room. In that room with me at 25 years old was Joe Pass, Howard Roberts, Joe DiOrio, Pat Hicks, and Don Mock, right? And they said, and the first thing out of Pat Hicks, who's a very, strategist, he said, "Well, Richard, what do you think you're worth?"
Wow.
Wow. And so, unfortunately, I had a little gift of gab, and I said, "Well, I have a master's degree from USC, and I'm not allowed to teach for anything less than X amount of money for dollars per hour." And they bought it.
Wow.
So, and then my first semester teaching there, Jennifer Batten on one side, Frank Gambale on the other side, and I'm in the middle, and there's not much soundproofing.
Yeah.
So I'm getting they did that on purpose to rattle my cage.
You think they did?
Oh yeah, he's got a master's degree from USC. Come on, let's put him in the shock troops. And I would like walk out of there, walk out of my teaching studio just going, oh no.
Dude,
And it was really a great comeuppance because to your point, man, it was a burning epicenter of creativity. And think of not just the amazing guitar players, but think of what Frank Gabali was doing at the time, and Scott Henderson and Joe was at his top.
yeah.
Joe Diorio was at top form. So yeah, you're right. Magic. It was really magic. I'm not sure it's ever been. I don't know. I haven't been there since then, but
Wow. So
remain.
you didn't continue there after that.
Um, I was there for about 4 years,
Oh, okay.
3 years, and then they hired me at USC as an assistant professor because I was part of that lineage and so
Yeah.
forth. And then not soon after that, because of tragic circumstances, Duke Miller, the chair, passed away, had a heart attack, and then soon after that, Paul LaRose, his replacement, passed away from Lou Gehrig's disease. And then here I am at 29 or something like that, sharing the apartment. So.
Wow. That's amazing. And the other thing that I want, and maybe you can kind of give a humorous take on this, but that time period, and I was a guy that played rock, but we were in there working on real book tunes, and we were trying to, you learn how to play guitar. We're not here to like, but there were a lot of guys back then that would come to school with the hair fully teased out and the
Yeah.
belts and the boots and all that stuff, right? And I'll never get over that because I'm like, dude, we're here to learn, right? I mean, it seemed like the '80s thing was just it was a thing.
And the 80s thing was virtuosic rock guitar, the back end of yacht rock, where it's sophisticated. You got to know your jazz. Jay Graydon, Larry Carlton, Mike Landau, all who played Tyler's.
Yeah,
Um, uh, it was a fascinating time, not replicated since, that you really had to that people like Steve Lukather were practicing hard and practicing their craft and wanting to put songs up like Rosanna. And if you think Rosanna was the most popular tune in the world for months, and he was 25 when he wrote it. So it was a magical time. It was what we all came to LA to do,
yeah,
right? And I mean, there's still, the funny thing is like, we don't want to be a couple of old guys on a porch going, get off my lawn, those are the good old days.
yeah,
I swore to myself when I was a kid in Eugene, I was not going to be that old pissed off jazz gladiator down at the end of the bar who was like, said the Beatles wrecked everything.
yeah, yeah,
Everything was cool until the Beatles came along, right? So Wes, so I've lived by that. I think there's never been a more exciting time to be a guitar player in LA. There's incredible stuff going on. My students are coming up with ridiculous stuff
yeah,
that I just want to, like, it's almost like a Zen or a karate or a judo kind of person. I just want to guide them into what they do best. Like
yeah,
Pat Metheny said this wonderful thing, what we love is this incredibly accurate compass telling us what we should be doing. And to your point about how vibrant those institutions like GIT and MI and USC and so forth, those wonderful music institutions, they're also institutions. And I've found that working especially with my grad students who are older guys, they've been institutionalized.
yeah,
Like they know how to play all the scales in the right places. They know how to play all the classic iconic licks and stuff like that. But what I do is I get them in the room and I say, "Man, you made it to SC. You're getting your doctorate at SC or your MM at USC. Congratulations. What are you going to do with what you got?" Because that's what the world wants to see, right? They want to see you do something with yourself. And that is the ultimate, the high mark of creativity is what you do with yourself,
yeah,
with music, right?
yeah,
So I have a ball kind of retasking. Like, you're not here to study more stuff. You're here to study. And Joe Diorio was huge with this. Man, Richard, people don't want to hear regurgitation
yeah,
of the jazz uh, what is it called? The jazz, um, the jazz book. They want to see the jazz canon.
Yeah.
Want to hear something original and so forth. So I kind of later in my career, I've really been working hard on that joint right there.
Yeah. That's an important lesson because the bottom line, and I just did a video and it's doing really well right now, and it
Yeah.
says, how good do you have to be to go pro? And you've got guys, I guarantee, that can run circles around me. But, it's like, well, what do you want to be able to do? There are guys that only know how to play cowboy chords, and they're playing 6 nights a week in Nashville. And so it's like finding, and it's just so many different things that you can do as a player. But you're right, I had a teacher tell me at a conservatory before I came out to California, and he says, if you get a jazz degree, all that's going to guarantee you is a job pushing broom at Walmart or something like that. And so for me, I was like, it's like got to learn some other skills, some marketing skills, some sales skills, because you got to be able to sell yourself.
Well, now more than ever because there's no labels, right? I'm on a label, but our relationship is completely different than a traditional label. So, absolutely, the last three singles, all of which were hits for me the last 3 years, I had my own label called Chill Harmonic Media, and it was a hard job, but I figured I needed to compete like the pros do. So I hired people who I've known throughout my career working as a sideman, but also as an artist, the top radio people in the country, and I hired the top promotions people, and I had to have a brand, and I found, but the most so you're absolutely right. Even those guys who had teased out hair, and believe me, dude, I had a permed mullet in my foolish youth because I was playing headbanger smooth jazz or whatever with Richard Elliott and all those like
Yeah.
Tower Power guys. So um, it's understanding your brand. That's really super important, right? And everybody from Joe DiOrio to me and you have our brands. We just have to embrace it. And the other side of that is the most important thing is your audience. Who is your audience? And that's really what I get to talking about with my grad students is who do you want to reach? Who do you resonate with? And this is sometimes that chooses you. But for me, I found this wonderful niche called smooth jazz where I can have harmonic calories, some, the songs are never more than 3 minutes and 40 seconds long. I can play guitar. I play a lot of melodies, and I can, like I said, I sneak harmonic calories in there. It's this wonderful thing that you learn as a professional called compromise. It's not a big compromise. As a matter of fact, it's hard as heck to beat 400 people out of the rate getting on Sirius XM
Yeah.
a week
Yeah.
and to stay there and keep going up. So it can be the same with a student of mine who wants to play with Chick Corea. um, it's fine. That's a skill set you have to do. And your audience is Chick Corea's audience. Look what Frank Gambale's audience is, Chick Corea's audience. And
Yeah.
Scott Henderson's audience is a little bit longer hair and a little bit more guitar player
Yeah.
oriented, but it's Chick Corea's audience.
Yeah.
Sophisticated songs, incredible technique, and kind of irreverent composition that's full of surprises. That's another silo that's different than my silo, but they're both, the important thing is we it's our compass. It's what we do. It's what we love. You can only do it if you love it. And we found our audiences.
Yeah.
And I think that's the masterclass moment when I go, your audience is the most important people in the universe. Who is your audience? And how do you get to them?
Yeah.
And those are really organic questions for every artist. Everybody, whether you're 15 years old or 50 something, when you're sitting down to ask the macro rather than the micro, like how do I move my fingers across this incredibly difficult matrix with a little bit of style to who's my audience and who's going to buy whatever the widget is that's left for people to buy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think, from my perspective, I try to tell people to be versatile. because and I in my time in Nashville I did a little bit of everything, touring, recording, all that, but I also wasn't too good to go play weddings because weddings pay good money. And on a wedding gig, you play everything. You play jazz standards. You play, groove jazz. You play rock and roll. You play funk. You play all that stuff in the course of an evening. And to me, that was always like I could go do a country tour gig, and after about 6 months, I'm bored out of my mind because just hitting big power chords and playing the same solo every night, it's not very fulfilling. But you
You got to
know,
keep your spirit alive, and you're actually talking about getting your street master's degrees by doing that. But the bigger issue here, Brad, is you're addressing your ego in that you're bringing in all these things. You're not saying, "Oh, no, I'm not too good for that." And again, institutionalization puts students in these silos of jazz is more rigorous, and that's why it's better than than blues, which
yeah,
is there's the majesty of the blues, as guitar players would interpret it, is much different than a jazz interpretation. So when you go to school for 4 years, and that's the culture that you're dealing with, and classical is part of that as well. Hell, tango has the same kind of purist people that, that's nouveau tango. We don't do that.
yeah,
We do traditional tango. So you're going to find that kind of stuff. The great mediator, dude, is finding the love in everything from
yeah,
funk to blues to rock to pop.
yeah,
And it's another thing that I tell my students is there's just too many great players out there playing country and jazz that love both those things for you to go and fake it. I would say that the age of faking it, the age of specializing, I mean the age of faking it, like studio player or whatever, is over.
yeah,
You got to be so good.
yeah, yeah.
So compliments to you.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I tell this story because being out in LA and after I left GIT, I ended up in a hair band and I ended up playing the Sunset Strip, and that was wild and crazy. But then when I left in 94 and moved to Nashville, and my first gig was a smooth jazz gig. And so and people think, well, how do you do that? Well, I mean, look, somebody calls you, hey man, you're new in town, you want to play a smooth jazz gig? I'm like, yeah. How much does it pay? $100? I'm there. And
Your research, you find out, oh, if I take my Les Paul and put it on the front pickup and roll off a little bit of the tone, I get kind of a Benson-y tone. And that's
yeah,
really all they're looking for, except for the fact that, oh, there's some changes and some important little grooves and pockets
yeah.
that are related to R&B, you
Yeah,
know.
and my time, studying with you and then being out in LA and hearing the wave, the radio station, the wave, hearing that. I was like, a minute I got out to LA and I put that station on, I'm like, oh, this is cool, man. There's some funk bass. There's the little stratty kind of little chicken picking, kind of guitar parts. And there's a couple chord changes. And, as long as I would, like you said, the harmonic calories, I would always add a little bit of harmonic calories because that little bit of GIT would kind of creep in there, but it served me well because Nashville didn't have that. So I was always sounded a little more advanced than some of the players there.
So you're addressing the harmony, and everybody in the room, whether they're musicologists or hairdressers, appreciate the harmony. It's a
Yeah.
deeper interpretation of music, and that's true in country, from country to bebop. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, and that's hard, man. That's a hard rubric to be able to go, oh yeah, that's a flat five chord on G flat, G7 flat five. I better hit my C sharp or my D flat.
Yeah.
And so that's right there. I think you summed it up. That's worth the 2 years at GIT alone, because that right there is maturity,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so that I think that's a wonderful point to make. And the other thing again is how important it is to remember that we all have fears, we all have to struggle, we all have to risk. You came all the way out to LA, or you went all the way to Nashville to do that. That's risk. And there's some dreams that we
Yeah.
have. And all those things commingle. the fear, of course, I can raise. How many of you guys get scared about music every once in a while? The whole room, oh yeah, like this. Well, you can also do that with Harvard business students. If they're honest, they're all, oh man, I got to go into business, you know?
Yeah.
So these universal fundamentals, they're also stoic. You know, I've been reading the Stoics a lot lately, right? So they've got like courage and justice and wisdom and temperance. Those four premises are something we deal with music all the time. Like, what is the right thing to play, or what's the wise thing to play? And yeah, so I'm really enjoying that part of teaching is that there are these life lessons that come from that struggle that we do called music, and the healthiness of sitting on the edge of your bed when you're 15 going, I'm going to chop that mountain down to the side. I can do this, man.
Yeah.
And it stays true throughout your life. You have to follow what makes you happy. And that's a really big universal fundamental as far as relationships go too,
Yeah.
and relationships, and they say that in order compromise is the great saver of relationships. Well, it's also the great saver of a career if you're willing, like you said,
Mm.
to play anything that comes
Yeah.
across.
Yeah.
I just made that was just my lane. I figured out. I love country. I love country. And I think Nashville, if I could end up anyplace else, I'm from a small town in Oregon, right?
Yeah.
So I love small towns. So
You
lucky.
would be amazed right now. Now, I'm in Florida now. I did 30 years in Nashville, but you would be amazed if you went to Nashville now. There are 300 stages there. You could literally see three different guitar players in each building and all different levels. I mean, there's different, you could see guys that you go, not that good, and then you might see another guy, this guy's pretty good. And a lot of it downtown is all this cover band stuff. It's a lot of drinking, it's a lot of bachelorette parties. It's like New Orleans on steroids.
Wow, interesting.
And but more so since when I moved there, there is a huge jazz scene now where there's a few jazz clubs and they're actually playing real jazz. Whereas when I first got there, it was kind of like I knew they weren't going to call giant steps. So I was like, yeah, I can handle this. I got girl from Ipanema, yeah, I got you, But I knew I wasn't going to have to play hard bop or anything really, really fast and like New York jazz.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah,
go ahead. No. What you're describing is like what I imagine 52nd Street was like in New York, right?
yeah,
Back in the day. What New Orleans is always like. It's a musical town, and kind of like Eugene. I was fortunate to go around. Robert Cray was a regular in Eugene, and I remember standing outside because I was 15, and the rain coming down so hard in Oregon, just my nose glued to that wet window, watching Robert Cray, and how important that was. So that live music thing is such an important component. Also, MI back in the day, you could bum around. I thought the coolest thing was live play workshop, right? Or
yeah,
I'm sorry, the open counseling, where you
yeah,
could bum around and sit with all kinds of people, including my a lot of my good friends, Alan Hines
yeah,
and Norman Brown and all those guys.
yeah.
What inspirating and inspirational place.
Yeah, all of those guys. I used to go and Norman Brown used to rehearse over in the little old building, and he'd just be in there rehearsing. I just go, man, can I just sit in here and
Right.
listen? Because
Yeah.
I love George Benson, and he had that thing, man. He Norman, had a lot of those chops, and it all kind of resonated with me because I had listened to George Benson as a kid.
I think there's a really great lesson to be learned from Norman because he and I were both trying to find record deals at the same time, and finally he got Motown, which was amazing. But he had that compass. He wanted to be an artist. He and he could play the music of George Benson really well, but also he had a very distinct idea of what he wanted to do with the guitar. We really break it down. He's doing so many cool things with that George Benson, that the Leibniz George Benson he had,
Yeah,
and great teacher too.
yeah.
And look what his career's just been nothing but in the
Yeah.
cloud.
Yeah, and your career as well. I mean, you've got a single out, "Bring It In,"
Yeah.
and that is on the Smooth Jazz Network Top 100. It's charting at number 38, I believe, is the correct number. I got that
Well, it
information
still
from
has
your.
its bullet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, man, you have done some amazing albums, and you're going to be touring this year with East Bay Soul.
Yeah.
I think your first gig is January 23rd in Palm Springs, California.
That's a very special band. You got Greg Adams, who was the original founding member of Tower of Power and did all those arrangements, and Herman Matthews on drums, who played with Tower of Power, and he played with Huey Lewis, and he played with everybody. So blessed to be able to play with him. Greatest, one of the great drummers on the planet. Nick Milo was Joe Cocker's music director for years. Got some Earth, Wind, and Fire people in there. Always have the best button trumpet player in town up on stage with us. Michael Stever plays with us, and anyway, man, it's a fun thing. Total funk fest on the guitar. Speaking of, it ain't smooth. Not,
Yeah,
nothing I'm doing up there is smooth. To your
yeah,
point, which is, and it's a joy, you know, it's
yeah,
a joy to be able to play and play out. And then I've got a bunch of duo things I'm doing all over the world too, as I usually
yeah,
do.
yeah.
I stay.
And it, isn't it so much fun playing those funk gigs? That was something that I love, playing rhythm guitar all night. But I used to tell people, when I'm in the nursing home, I'm not going to be able to take care of myself because my right hand's going to be shot.
You know what? I learned something on this last round with East Bay Soul with Herman. I knew I was going to be playing with Herman, and I've always struggled with my pocket and my time, and just it was just one of those things I've always worked on. And so I set up my first night on the gig. I set up so I could see Herman's kick drum, corner of my eye, and then when I could get off the music, I could play because I was a new guy. I was like subbing at first and stuff, and I had to read all the stuff. But it was so help. By the way, that's a great tip for anybody who wants to play funk, man. That big one, Alfonso Johnson at USC. I remember being on a jury with him, and all his bass kids, knew about the big one.
Yeah.
And then if you think about that big one on the guitar, you can play a big chord on
Boom.
one. It doesn't have to be a thump. It can be a big one.
Yeah.
So that's an important place to start. And then after that, you just shut up and
Yeah.
listen. And maybe big one when it comes around again on that other chord. And all
Yeah.
that takes is one time around. And by then, through osmosis or through, your natural musical gravity, you hear what he's doing, hear what somebody's doing with a hi-hat. And
Yeah.
that's the subdivision. So big one, dig in the hi-hat. And that
Yeah.
naturally is going to kick in.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the next thing is going to be the snare, kick, snare, or hat.
Yeah.
Either play with or play against, so you've got a little
Yeah.
conversation going. And anytime you do a mix, you do rhythm guitar on the left and then and hi-hat on the right, or vice,
Ah, because
those
they're
two are
kind of,
talking to each other.
yeah.
Subdivision, right?
Yeah.
Man, it helped so much. And even then, I mean, his pocket is such a particular thing that it was a reminded me the incredible importance of in funk of not just tick tick tick, it's how the conversation is in agreement, the
Yeah.
pocket. And I go all over the world, and sometimes I'll do master classes, and some, Dutch kid or a Finnish kid will go, Professor Smith, what is this thing called pocket? Kind of like this mysterious, magical thing. And I'll tell you, man, in LA and Nashville, and I have to say, and I'm not nationalistic, it's an incredible American cultural thing. The drummers here don't play like anybody else in the world, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, happily so.
I've heard people describe it as, it's a pocket is where you hold the groove. And if you don't have no pocket, you can't hold no groove. I mean, that's how Victor Wooten always would say. And
Yeah, and it takes huge ears. It's like the coolest, deepest listening exercise there
yeah,
is. You can't do not do anything unless you're checking in with the rhythm
yeah,
section,
yeah,
primarily the bass and drummer. And yeah, man. So it's for me, I love the majesty of music, of a life in music, is to be in it for as long as you and I have, and still find these little things that just go ding.
yeah.
And yeah, it's never been a better time to be a musician.
Yeah, and I think that brings a point that I would hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to play Brick House. I've played that 1,000 times." And I take the different approach. I go, I don't mind playing it because every time I play it, I'm trying to lock in that rhythm guitar part. And depending on the drummer, depending on the rhythm section, that's a slightly different job every night. And I focus on the minute details of the groove
Yeah.
and I don't get bored. And then if people are dancing, well then I got a show in front of me to watch, and it's fun. But if you just think of it, oh, I've played this 1,000 times. Yeah, there's not a lot of chord changes. I mean, there's no chord changes essentially, but it's like find
Conversation.
something and focus on it.
It's the agreement. It's like having a Labrador retriever that loves you. Do you ever get tired of petting them or playing ball with them? No. Show up to that gig. Yeah, we're gonna do the same set we've been doing for the season. And tonight's gonna be just as fun as it always have. Because that's why we're in music. It's like the
Yeah.
most powerful thing in the universe.
Yeah.
To every time I pull that guitar out and put it in the case, I'm a little bit excited, a little bit nervous, a little bit, ooh, what's going to happen tonight? Man, what a blessing that is. And that I could be going to a gig to play Brick House
Yeah.
and and playing with great guys like Herman and Nick Milo and Del Atkins and Greg Adams and the band is just it's like a big it's like a men's support group that
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, man, I got that's funky. And
Yeah.
what else I figured out is the less I play, the better I sound. So I've gotten into micro pockets where I just go
Yeah.
chick it,
Yeah.
chick it, and
Yeah.
so forth. So, but also, I wanted to talk about the Tyler for a second.
Absolutely.
This is because you just talked to Rich, who
Yes.
I think he's going to be really taking the Tyler factory.
Oh, he is.
Jim Tyler and I went all the way back to this guy, which you remember from G.I.T.
Yes.
probably. And this was the first, this is the second Studio Elite. Lukather, I think, had the first, or I think Landau did. I had like the third, second or third. And these are unusual because of the array of settings that they have, so you can get so many different sounds. And believe me, when you're touring all over the world and you're plugging into different amps, there's something called like a ritual. It's a comfort zone. You want to be able to have at least something you can make the amp du jour sound good with.
Yeah.
So I've used every possible setting several different times to several different ways. Another really important thing that this had all the way back in the day was a Demeter preamp, which was actually slightly modded by Jim to take to not be so much of a mid-range boost, but be more of a squash that happens when that preamp kicks in. And what it is you can this button right here attenuates it. So here it's on full and here it's off all the way. And I can kick it in and out with this button. So that actually, if I throw it on the back pickup and I want just a little bit more warmth, then I can throw that in and it really just sings in the upper register.
Yeah.
And so that's an incredible that I don't see on any other guitars, but there's a lot of things like the body comes in a little closer here. So right in here, that was a certain type of a mod.
Yeah.
And they really are the sound of the 80s because Dan Huff and Steve Watson, who was another mentor of mine, he was on all the TV shows, Hill Street Blues, Magnum PI,
Yeah.
all those. I just came to LA to be that guy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's only five guys that did all the work all the time. So, but incredible whammy things on this. Also a push pull in the back that kicks in the back pickup so you can get a telly sound with these two pickups.
Yeah.
So that was kind of when I hanging out with Jim for hours going, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? So I was lucky enough to Rich called me and said, well, why don't we make you because I'd had a couple more made and they just weren't the same as that. And
Yeah.
again, to the point of having a ritual, you get in front of 20 graduate students and you've got to have things happening and you want to know where everything is. So
Yeah.
this guitar is the precise copy of this guy this is
Wow.
39 years old this
Wow.
year and this is 6 weeks old.
Wow.
And they're exactly the same. I guess it's my model, and but I'm not here to sell them. I'm just here to praise what is probably the finest guitar in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and the one change I had on this guitar is that it's chambered, so it's
Wow.
four 4 pounds.
Wow.
It's absolutely featherweight, so great for us older guys with the shoulders, you know.
Yeah.
But
So this is the new signature model, and like I said, I just talked to Rich,
yeah,
and I told him I was getting ready to interview you, and he says, "Make him show you the guitar."
yeah.
This is the first time anybody is seeing this, and man, that is a beautiful guitar. And
So
you said I'm not here to sell James Tyler guitars. Well, I'm here to sell James Tyler guitars because I think they're incredible. Show them the headstock too. Show them the headstock.
and this version is called the White Schmear.
Wow.
It's a really beautiful feel, and no, and it got the newest Floyd Rose, and it's just a gorgeous sounding box. You know, just
And
this
what's the deal with the pickups on that?
uh, hot stacks, and then this is a special. So what Tyler has is a lot of these humbuckers like this that they've wrapped themselves, and then they have an array. They have about 6 different plates that you can actually put into a guitar, and here with the same guitar, you slip in the plate with the
Wow.
new pickup on. And this was number 3, I think. I can't remember the name of it, but this one definitely stood out from the other ones. And I believe. Yeah, I got to call Rich and he can tell you, and then you
Okay.
get information. Darn, I wish I could remember, but it's obviously my eyes are on different things. But you got so
Wow.
really beautiful. It's really just a gorgeous responsive. I wish I could play. One of these times we'll just do a thing where I can just play it for you.
Yeah, man, that is amazing, and what timing that I just happened to line up an interview with Rich on the same day that I talked to you. It's almost like what was it, 40 years later or 38 years later, and
Yeah.
it comes out that you've got a signature guitar coming with James Tyler, who I just plugged the hell out of that company because I think it's just so incredible that every guitar is a piece of art with those guys.
Oh my God. Well, you are an enthusiast, then I got to tell you something. Being a young guy in LA from Oregon, there were a lot of holes in my playing, and I got called out to do. I was way above my weight class in some of these things, but this Tyler, this saved my life so many times because it sounded so, and also made the job easier for me because the guitar sounded so great.
Yeah.
And I mean, I borrowed money from my girlfriend and my mother at that time. I think my mom gave it to me as a graduation present, some of this. And best investment I've made, paid for a couple of houses. And
Wow.
um, you're absolutely right. Jim was an exacting, articulate, non uncompromising guy who really went after tone. And again, there's so many iconic records that have Tyler's on. All of like so much of the Michael Jackson albums had Tyler's being on. Toto,
Yeah.
all these iconic yacht rock bands had that
Yeah.
tingle, that
I
really
love
hot.
that stuff, man. It,
Yeah,
it's something about your musical taste. And now that I'm a older gentleman, I love yacht rock. It's like I don't know what it
right.
is. It's
Speaking of old guys on
soothing.
the on the porch.
Yeah, it's soothing, and there's some chord changes and some tasty licks in there, and all these songs when I was a kid I couldn't stand to hear. Now I'm like, oh yeah, this one, and it comes on. So I love that stuff, and I think
That's
it's
so
just a
cool.
natural progression as we age. Our ears want to hear different things.
I think that's, one of the majesty of music, and um I I think that that it's a wacky world now. I mean, I think the music means something different to the mainstream audience. The students or the kids, the people in general, are listening to more music in a weekend than you and I listen to in an entire summer. You
Yeah.
know, like when Mudslide Slim, that was the summer of '74, you know,
Yeah.
and and so that informs a different type of teaching, and it informs like I said, they're listening to and exhausting their music input in a matter of weeks. Um, Yet at the same time, like there's so many interesting prog rock bands out there. I
Yeah.
have an ensemble at SC that does Pliny and Periphery and
Wow.
um, Chon. Some of these great, great
Yeah.
progressive metal bands.
Yeah.
It's deep from a writing perspective, it's deep from a playing perspective, and so it really gives me faith for, to your point, the more harmonic calories and the more technical things that have a niche, and then because of the internet, you can find your audience.
Yeah.
And some of my groups that have come out as SC, like Knower, or not my groups, students who've come out and put their passion into action, Knower and Scary Pockets and Moonchild, they're all so distinctively uh, personal.
Yeah.
They've got their own personalities and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. I'm never going to be that guy that said, that the internet came along and wrecked everything. It makes it harder. The music business has always been hard,
It's
man.
always been hard. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a matter of finding your audience.
What is your take? There's a lot of the old school. Nashville is a town where everything is old school Fender, old school Les Paul. I'm talking about the studio guys.
Yeah,
And so they've got old Marshall heads and they've got old Vox amps and old Fender amps and pedals. Everything's kind of pedals straight into the front of an amp.
yeah.
But, technology has changed so much. What is your take on amp modeling versus, say, tube amps?
Right. So on my singles, I just take my Tyler and plug it straight into this 737. I'm old school, probably to the point of people in Nashville to their point, which is it just lets you just get a great instrument and let the fingers and the guitar do the talking. I did an album called Tangos about 10 years ago, maybe less, but that I did everything on guitar rig. And I found that it really just depended on the guitar that you played. I have a 1959 ES355 that just is gorgeous
Yeah,
sound, and that worked best to play with that because the Tyler had this high end that excited some of the digitalia.
yeah,
But I wasn't trying to imitate a Gibson or a Fender. I was just doing my tangos thing, which had a kind of there's a lot of overdrive stuff and there were different kind of sounds. So for my money, that worked out really well. When people hire me to do things, sometimes I'll do a track and I'll have some of the traditional stuff on one track, and then I'll do a guitar rig on another track and ask, and they can um, kind of mix and match, or
yeah,
call me back and say, well, take a little distortion out, and there's all that tweaking that you do. So I like to have the option. I
yeah,
think both creative platforms. If you're trying to sound like a 60 a 61 ES335 through a Fender Deluxe, you might as well just get those. Have
yeah,
one. I mean, if you're a pro,
yeah,
otherwise it's gonna be really hard to get that sound from the digitalia. But you can get at it. You can do what that does.
yeah, yeah. The thing that I found was I had thousands of dollars in tube heads, and I was out on the road, and I had
Oh yeah,
three heads and all this stuff, and then the power would be different in all these different venues, and it sounded different every single
right.
night.
Yeah.
And I could get to the after party quicker in my head if I went the Kemper route. But I kept threatening to do it, but I never did.
You clearly have your priorities in order. Um, Yeah, I think that's the thing is like going out and playing through system du jour. A lot of the tours now just have that all set up, and they actually have somebody who programs all the presets for the guitar players that change automatically throughout
Yeah.
the show. And some of my students do a lot of that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And and that's fine too. I think to your point, and this is also a very stoic premise, is to be nimble, is to be flexible, to reserve the right not to have an opinion. I
Yeah.
think that's a really powerful thing, especially in the music business. Um, we suffer more in our imagination than we do in reality. So there's
Yeah.
so much of that crazy mental game that goes on in our heads. So I would say, along with really finding your audience and writing your own music, the way Joe used to make me, Richard, come in, bring a new piece every week. Oh, we're going to play on your stuff, man. I'm going to show you how to be. I think that is studying Stoicism is these are like 2,500-year-old philosophy of how to be a good person, how to be a good man,
Yeah.
and be comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
Which another thing I tell my students, man, I wish when I was a freshman or a grad student at USC, I dug where I was.
Yeah.
That you have to realize, and like to your point, and much appreciated by anybody who's been through MI, you were in the right place at the right time, doing the right things with the right people for your life. You were risking, you were believing in yourself. These are these great things that make one's career, as much of an act of creativity as the act of playing that
Yeah.
impossibly difficult instrument.
Yeah. It's, and I'm glad you get into this philosophic, kind of talk because my channel started out as anybody would be, playing some stuff and maybe teaching a couple things. And then when I decided to just put the guitar down and talk, that's when the numbers started going up. And it is the philosophy of playing and telling people what it's like. There's a lot of guys that didn't take that chance in their early in their life. And I let them know the good side of it, and I let them know the bad side of taking on a career in music. I've had all the highs and all the lows, and now I'm clear-eyed and able to tell this message.
Yes.
And it's amazing that now all I do is get up in the morning and talk for 15 minutes, and then I edit it, put it up, and that's my thing. Now I'll put little clips maybe at the top, just playing something, but it's all the philosophy of life and getting through it. It's like just recently, Keith Urban just canned his bass player of 25 years.
Mm.
And my wife goes, "Oh, Keith Urban." And I go, "I got to go. I got to go." And I immediately went in here and had to talk about it because things like that trigger my memory. Look, I know what that guy's going through. I know it's tough. And I know the lessons of why these things happen in the music business. It's just the way it is.
But the perseverance and determination are an incredibly stoic premise. I mean, 2,500 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius was dealing when he was the most powerful man in the world, but he had gulls coming over the walls of Rome, and he had to deal with hookworm, and three of his children died in infancy, and so he had these struggles that are important for us to get through, and that music is this manifestation of obsessive compulsive meets self-doubts and fears. Our fears and our doubts are our worst enemies. And if music is this conduit that you learn that message from, and learn how to overcome it, that's not to say our friends that we came up with who went into to law or bus driving or whatever as careers don't have those struggles on a daily basis. Music just augments it incredibly. And but the satisfaction, I still drive as a kid from a small town in Oregon. I still drive down through LA, and every once in a while this tune will come on the radio and go, "Oh, this is cool. Oh, wait a minute. It's me."
Wow.
And my hair will stand up. I go, "I'm still doing it, you know?"
Yeah.
And that's a very stoic premise. And the other thing is that they believe in doing something a little bit every day. Jimmy Carter, another great stoic, woke up every morning and said, "It's another excuse to do the best job that I can today."
Yeah.
Rosalind Carter, I've just heard this morning. Rosalind Carter said, "Yes, but do you have to do it at 5 o'clock in the morning? I think I want to be my best like at around 11, you know?" But he would get up every morning at 5:30 and just try and do his best. And
Yeah.
so did Marcus Aurelius, so did Seneca, so did all these great, awesome uh, Stoics.
Wow.
Gu- Music is a conduit for that. Music is the siphon that can go into a person's personality.
That's amazing because you just said that I get up at 5 in the morning every morning and I come in here and that's when I do my work.
That's a
Before the
pretty exciting
family
story.
gets up, before the wife and the child get up, and I
Yeah.
come in here and I whisper and I tell these whispered tales of yore. And that's the whole thing. People go, "Why are you whispering?" I'm whispering because the family is sleeping. And these are stories that my daughter will want to hear when she's 19 or 20, but for now, she just kind of knows her dad goes in here and tells these stories. And that's
Well, isn't
kind
that
of the thing.
wonderful? Again, to the benefit of music, that you can find this tendril that goes off. That's not like getting up in the morning and practicing your scales the way when you were 20. We have these pies at different times in our life. When we're 20, it's all practice.
Yeah.
That's one big piece of pie. Then you go to school and then you got to study and practice. And then you get to be a little older, you got to hustle gigs, and the study and the practice maybe goes down and the gigs take over. And then now you've just thrown that pie out and you have this pie that's driven by your enthusiasm and by your spirit and by the most important thing in music, which is, this compass that tells us what we should be doing.
Yeah.
And if that's not thank you, Pat Metheny. If that's not a wonderful way to conduct yourself in your decisions and things like that, I think it's wonderful. It's finding your lane, finding your niche, finding your audience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And but the most important thing is we stay enthusiastic and we stay good people to all the people around us. That's
Yeah.
just such an important thing that we forget as rock and roll enthusiasts, you know?
Yeah. It's the thing is I find is I'm helping people. I get so many people who goes and I've got now all these older guitar players every morning and we're in the chat, while the video is debuting every morning 8 a.m. new video comes out and we're checking on each other. And I know some guys are dealing with health, effects of years of rock and rolling and so we're like it's kind of like a support team because man this lifestyle and that it can lead you to some dark places. It can lead you to being alone. I mean it's a tough life and being able to finally now I'm helping people. I'm not just out trying to play and meet a date for the night and have a raging party at the house after the gig. I'm actually helping people and connecting with people and letting them know, hey, it's okay that your circle is smaller now.
Well, you were helping people by having raging parties too. You just didn't, you were raging along with it. But here's the thing, man. We got through our teens, right? We got through our teens. That was scary enough, experimenting with all sorts of unsavory things. We got into our 20s. We discovered either going off to school or going into work, whatever. There's still a lot of unsavory things that can happen. And we get into our 30s, late 20s and 30s, we're getting married and we're having kids or we're getting and that might be a really great trip or we run into our first round of divorces in our 30s. So tough, full of potholes, but still being pushed by our enthusiasm. We get into our 40s and we've been touring for 10 years, or we got, into some other unsavory things. And we got through our 40s, though some of our friends didn't, right?
Yeah.
And we moved into our 50s. And now, with me in our 60s, thinking about retirement or what that means and how that looks. And this, as you get older, it doesn't get easier. This is the hard times. Those times were hard, but they were also fun. And,
Yeah.
you were bumping our heads into everything and falling on our asses and everything
Yeah.
like that. Excuse my French. But from what I understand from reading a lot of books on happy retirement, this is no joke. And the things that come through are what made us excited when we were 15, sitting on the edge of our bed. How do we reconnect with that? Okay, so friends, support groups. Okay, whether that's a loving wife or a buddy, you know,
Yeah.
these are important things to keep going. To have to be in love with what you're doing, following your compass. Your compass is this accurate. What you love is this compass telling you what you should be doing. So going after that, because after a life of doing life, we have a different processor going on. We have to reenact, we have to reconnect with that child in us that just wants to have fun. And what's really cool is I've been reconnecting with friends from high school. They're the same guys, and that reignites a lot of this fun, and
Yeah.
it's like we should be going in a direction of healthy fun, and that's
Yeah.
what's going to make our lives better, more fulfilling, longer, and keep us away from some of the unsavory things. Because I've
Yeah.
had people who have retired from music and from teaching and things like that, and things didn't go well for them, and it's a very difficult thing to see. So I intend to, when I step aside from teaching, which is my straight gig, my daily gig, I intend to have a ball. I'm
Yeah.
just like fun is going to be forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
and you
this,
know what? Playing a James Tyler guitar keeps you young. So
I mean,
everybody buy a Richard Smith, James Tyler guitar because it is. I tell my wife it's why I wake up every day, even if I'm not playing gigs now. It's the thing that I'm always thinking about, and I might be talking on my channel, but I'm still talking about playing guitar.
yes. When I go out to Tyler's, it's like it's my happy place. And Rich and I go out. We don't talk as much about guitars, but we talk about philosophy and life.
Wow.
And um, and I can't imagine. Like I tell my students, the 18-year-olds, I just say, guys, this is the coolest thing on earth.
Yeah.
This is this is going to give you so much joy and give you so much. It's like money in the bank with a good interest. Earning a good interest. It just keeps giving.
Yeah.
And like I said, I remember working with Jim on this, and his dedication was so incredibly beautiful that it was like I want to play my best on this thing because I know the love that went into this. And it's the same as it can be the same as a 1959 ES 355 or
Yeah.
something like that. But it makes me want to pick it up and play, and that's the important thing. And that's Stoic too, practicing every
Yeah.
day.
That's amazing, man. This has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna if there's any links or anything you want me to put in the description of the video, I'll be more than happy to share your music links or anything like that. But man, this is so deep, and I thank you so much for doing this. It's
Oh,
it's been
dude,
incredible to see you again, and after all these years, you still look exactly the same.
you too, man. We got to whatever you're drinking, I want some. Um, we
Sparkling water, bro.
that's our secret, everybody.
Dude,
Secret,
dude,
finger toast.
sparkling water, bro. Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
I would love to have a session with you when I can fire this thing up and you can and I can make it angry and you can hear what it does. And
Let's
maybe
do
do that.
that. We'll do
Okay.
that next time.
All right, brother.
All right.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much, brother. Have a great day.
Thank you. You got a wonderful show here. I'm going to start watching.
Awesome. Thanks, man. See
All
ya.
right.